a crucial thing when, well, in general, a crucial thing in general, but especially in my situation, which is what my kind of videos are about, is kind of based around my situation and addressing it to myself. But I think something that could be beneficial for anyone in any situation, but specifically in a situation where you're trying to recover from something, or you're you've just gone through something that is knocked you back. It could be physically, mentally, emotionally, job-wise. It could be anything, but is essentially critical thinking. I split into intentions and reflections, with kind of most of the onus being on the reflection at the end of the day. And this could be on how you think, how you've behaved, or it could just be a kind of general statement for the day. For me, mornings, I like to give myself things to be intentional for throughout the day. Whether that is a loose claim, it could literally just be any action you do, ensure you're doing it with intent. That's where I started out, because I would find that oftentimes through days or through actions or when I'm doing things, I find it strictly autopilot, essentially, where I'm just kind of doing subconsciously, and there's no kind of action behind that, and I end up putting myself in foreign situations without knowing how, and essentially just kind of being a passenger in my own existence. So to start that, my aim was just to be intentional with the things I do. So even right now, I can go and go in the shop after I've done this, but even through there, I'm having to kind of tell myself to be intentional, even in what food I'm going to buy. You know, it can start that simply, and I think applying it to that kind of simple of an idea is what's going to make it a kind of practical, natural thought process, instead of just applying it to, you know, big things, whether it's like a project or a big event that you've got, or a decision. Obviously, the kind of intent behind that matters more, but it's way less common and less reproducible, I guess. So that's where I started with my intentions, and it hopefully will develop to a point where I can set myself specific things to be intentional with through the day, or just give myself goals. But like I said, the reflections to me are the most important part. And again, it doesn't have to be the reflections on everything you've done, and it doesn't even have to be the reflections on the things you've set out to be intentional for in the day. Although that would be helpful to address them, it doesn't have to be. Like for me, there lots of things occur in a day mentally that I need to reflect on. My thought processes, you know, why at this time of day have I felt like this, or anything like that. Mentally, it is more of an aim for me, just on understanding why you do certain things or think certain things or anything like that. But being able to address them is how you're going to develop, not just develop your mindset, but yourself as a person. And it is really important for everyone, and it's kind of been exaggerated to me recently, almost having to do that, having to, at the end of every day, kind of be your own supporter and go over it and say, okay, you did that well, you dealt with this then, all the things like that, the acknowledgement and the recognising of what you did is going to give you the tool or tools to develop from that and to make sure that something negative like that doesn't happen again. So it's a case of taking advantage of all the kind of experiences you have through the day that's going to help build you up, essentially. I've also found that within reflecting things daily, it helps to kind of reinforce the present mindset, because oftentimes if there is something that has annoyed you throughout the day, or something that has bothered you or got you down, people tend to let that linger for a lot longer than it has to, and it could affect them into the next day or the next week or anything like that. And I have run into those problems all too regularly. I will kind of leave an issue thinking that it'll be best to address it a later date. You hear a lot of people say that, put something to the side until you're better equipped to deal with it. And within my experiences, that's the worst thing to do. I think that when you're in a bad situation, or even something small, something negative's happened that is burrowed in there, that if you're not addressing it at the time of when it happens, you're allowing it to develop more than it needs to. Something that could initially just start as a thought could kind of manifest itself into this big idea, this kind of looming dark cloud of essentially make-believe. We suffer more in our minds than we do in real life, because the mind is cruelly constructed to instigate these worries or these alternative outcomes to things that just, like I said, burrow in there, and it's very hard to shift, and the more you delay it, the more it's going to develop, and the less equipped you're going to be to deal with it. So I've always, or haven't always speaking in recent terms, but I've always recently tried to address things on the day or the time that it happens, and the reflections help with that a lot, because I'm not saying I'm nowhere near perfect, but I'm recognising the things that happen and how to deal with them, and in saying I'm not perfect, there are occasions, probably every day of this last week and a half, where there have been a train of negative thoughts, and I've just ignored them, essentially. But what I have done is, instead of typically ignoring this and then trying to forget about it completely, and then it resurfaces at some point where I'm not prepared to deal with it, and has a worse impact, I will understand that this is something that I can take control over, and I have to do that today. So at the end of the day, I will say, well, there is XYZ that came up. It could have been physically or in your head that you pushed to the side, but you need to reflect on now and then leave in today. And that's what I found really helpful with the reflection side of things, is it almost puts that full stop after a majority of bad thoughts. I put bad in air quotes, because it's never actually bad. You're actually gaining more from these bad things, but typically the stimulus and the reaction is negative. So these bad things, and I've tried to ensure that as much as possible can be kept within that day and kind of confined to that, to where it doesn't seep into my present or my future, even if it bothers me that much mentally. Like I said, it's not to say that these negative things don't happen and they don't bother me or bother people, and I'd be very wrong to say that, you know, I'm this impenetrable mind fortress. You know, every day has been very tough mentally. It's a mentally draining thing to almost force myself to be actively filing through these thoughts or processes. And there are a lot of things that kind of slip through and bother me a lot, and you know, take me down a few pegs. But again, I'm fully understanding now that all of these things are going to bring me clarity, positivity, development, mentally, physically. So I know that there is good from all of them, and I'm fully understanding of that now, which is already an ease. You know, when I do find myself, you know, yesterday was a bad day, but again, like I've made a video on bad days. Bad days happen. You deal with it. You address it in the day as much as you can, and then you leave that bad day. That bad day is as minimal as you can make it. So I've left that as a bad day, and also understood that, you know, if that's a bad day and I've dealt with it, think how much better days could be. You know, think how much better days you can make once you've kind of fully come to grips and understood what's going on mentally, and what you need to address and how you're going to learn from it. So I'm putting that faith in myself, and you know, like I said, it's not to say that I'm unbothered. As much as I'd love to be, and as much as I'm trying to apply these Stoic beliefs to my life, I know it's not going to be a case of a week of practicing and I'm set for life. You know, it's a daily application, but each day is an opportunity to develop, and that's how I'm seeing it. So, moral of the story is, if you're someone like me and you find yourself in positions where you're letting these small negative thoughts develop, then reflecting on them is an important thing. And if you can set intentions and reflections and kind of let them work in harmony, even better. If not, just start with the one. Start with, you know, 5 minutes in the evening of just kind of running over the events of the day, the good, the bad, the whatever. Any event you consider significant in the day, run over it, find what you can from it, and then leave it in that day. There's obviously, you know, mindfulness and meditation tricks that help with that a lot. And for me, even just using my breathing as a home space. I don't know what the kind of official term for it is. What is it called? Is it a home space? I don't know what it's actually called, but essentially, you know, it's not just all down to my mind battling these thoughts. You know, there are a lot of times, like I said, where something comes up, and I know that I need to address this later in the day. So just using the breath, counting the top of the breath and the bottom of the exhale, even, you know, for 10 seconds, just kind of keeps you present, grounds you, and keeps you in the moment, and then you can kind of go on with it. Because for me, if I don't address something, it just, like I said, stays and festers and manifests and builds. So I started waffling again, but essentially reflect on what you can. That's how you're going to develop. You're not going to develop from no work. You need to understand that, you know, the better things in life come from the harder work. So tell yourself that. Tell yourself you've got to put the work in. Reflecting helps. And just take each day as a step. Whether it's good, bad, you don't even have to see it as anything. You know, putting a label on a day can sometimes be worse. Just make it a day. But you get through it. Every day there is something in that day that you can address and improve from. So try and do that with your reflections and become